Welcome back to PBCJ's live broadcast of the first ever regional conference being held in Jamaica under the Intellectual Property and Creative Industries. That's what we're looking at. It's the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office putting on this particular seminar, 3 days, and I can tell you that yesterday was fantastic. Today, everybody's rolling up their sleeves and making sure they get down to understanding the issues so that we can have some real things coming out of this conference. I'm Naomi Francis here at the UWI's regional office on Mona Road, right across from the main building at the University of the West Indies with this conference. With me this morning is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, Mr. Robin Clark. Had some very penetrating questions for our panelists this morning, and this morning we looked at that legal framework, that regulatory framework that enables the creative industry and certainly intellectual property. Robin, thanks a lot for joining us.
You're welcome.
You had some very, very penetrating questions. First of all, you finished your first degree, you finished your master's degree, and you're really looking at the creative industries now. What particularly almost piques your interest in that area?
Well, it's a new area. One of the things I realized when I started my own work on the creative industries is that while, for example, traditional goods and services were going down, the creative industries was going up. There was growth in it, even in Jamaica and across the world. So that piqued my interest. Also, too, I know that traditional in our country, we are trying to find other ways of making money. It's the talk is tourism, the talk is agriculture. But to me, those are dying. Those are becoming dinosaurs. We need to look to a new economy. The world is looking at the creative sector. The world is looking at the creative industry, and I believe that we need now to move in that direction as a country.
That's a very good point you make, and I remember one of the participants a while ago making the point that, listen, we must do our own research, get our own definitions going so that we can measure our own, trend within the creative industries. So one of the questions I really wanted to get from Robin Clark, who is a lecturer at the UWI Mona, is, for example, how then are we in Jamaica trying to define our own creative industry, our own intellectual property? And a very, very penetrating question that came from the floor, which is, how do we also define brand Jamaica? What is Jamaican? Is it whatever is produced in our shores? Suppose there's a bright Jamaican overseas that has produced something that is wholly owned Jamaican.
Well, yes, because of our unique culture, you find that Jamaica is not just an island. Jamaica is also a brand.
Yes.
So partly what now needs to be considered is how we are going to include the name Jamaica as a part of intellectual property rights protection. Because everywhere you go in the world, people are saying made in Jamaica. People have all kinds of Jamaican things, labels. These things are being sometimes used willy-nilly, as was said. So my interest, and this is why I asked them, what is JIPO, WIPO, or whatever entity that is responsible for doing that? How are they going to protect the name, the brand name Jamaica? And I wanted to even ask another question to the panelists. There was no distinction in my mind that was made between the cultural industries as opposed to the creative industries.
And help us, because you lecture in this area where that some people say that's the gray area. How do we straddle there? How do you make that difference and determination?
Well, cultural things are based on our legacy, based on our history. But remember, with the creative sector now, you're talking about people's ingenuity, people using their creative minds to come up with a product. All right. Sometimes it is considered Jamaican because it is created in Jamaica.
But it's interlinked as well.
Right. Of course, it's definitely interlinked because what people do, the creators do, they pull from the culture to create things.
Yes.
So, for example, Patois apparel, they pulled on the Jamaican language, the vernacular, to come up with a Patois apparel, clothes that is labeled, that has markings, Jamaican sayings, old fire stick, easy to catch, that kind of thing. So of course they are interlinked, but of course in terms of intellectual property rights, in my mind there needs to be a distinction, because as was said also too about if you enter the court, are we going to use them interchangeably?
Yes.
That can affect the verdict, that can affect the outcome. So there needs to be a distinction made locally. All right, so that is just my 2 cents on that.
In 20 seconds, tell us the gambit of that research that you're doing.
Well, we are looking specifically at certain areas. For example, Stages Production, Jambies International. We want to see what are the needs of these sectors. We want to get the information from them. We are, as a part of the university in my role.
So you're
there,
looking at the creative section,
right? The
which
creative
includes
sectors.
The theatre,
The
in particular.
theatre, music, all of that. I'm going to interview some persons who are involved in animation. Animation is now the big new buzz in terms of the creative
and
sector.
we'll have that discussion, I believe, later on or tomorrow.
Right. So we want to find out from them now what are some of their first of all, what are the ingredients of success? What are their advice for people who want to enter the sector? But what are some of their challenges? Then when we finish the research now, we can then make recommendations either to JIPO, either to the government, use the information, and as was said too, we need to document, we need to research. The only way the creative sector in Jamaica will become the new buzz around town is unless it is informed by data.
We have to roll up our sleeves and do that work to get
Not
the data.
Much is being done in terms of documentation. Sometimes the creators themselves are a little bit hesitant to give the information. I have to be constantly reminding them, I don't work for the government. I'm not here to collect it. I'm not here to as a disguise for taxation. But if we are to help you, we need the information.
Great, fantastic. Good work in terms of getting that data out. In terms of the research work element, that is definitely needed. Thanks a lot, Robin Clark.
Thank you so very
for joining
much.
us, and keep lecturing. All right?
Thanks. All
right. Fantastic there. Robin Clark, lecturer at UWI Mona, encouraging us to... Yes, please. Mr. Ganchev is coming next with me. He is actually the Deputy Director and the head of the Creative Industries section of Copyright Infrastructure Division, World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO in Geneva. Thank you so much, Mr. Ganchev, for coming to Jamaica and helping out in terms of our greater understanding of intellectual property and the creative industries. Now, you've been here in Jamaica and you made a presentation yesterday. You've been listening to the presentation so far. Your impressions, first of all.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to your studio.
Thank you.
It's really a pleasure to be able to help to spread the word for the conference. Second of all, I'd like to say that this conference has been in the making for quite some time. We have discussed it for probably about 2 years with the colleagues in the Jamaican Intellectual Property Office. And we have tried to prepare it as best as we could.
Yes.
So I'm very happy that finally it's taking place. What are my impressions? My impressions are that the level is very high, and the audience is extremely participatory and active and enthusiastic. I've attended a number of conferences around the world. It's not always that you get this kind of response from the room.
Very active and participatory audience, especially this morning.
Yeah, I think all sessions have been, and I think that the interest is only going to get bigger and bigger because we are going to go into the details now. So I think the level of the audience is very high, very intelligent questions, very pointed questions. In fact, the time that we envisaged for questions and answers probably is not sufficient.
You need a much longer time for that.
Yes,
really.
That's one of the lessons to take. But so far so good, it's going great.
Fantastic. Now, you work with WIPO, and of course there's JIPO in Jamaica. We're trying to fashion how do we take brand Jamaica and own it as a country. I think one of the most penetrating questions I found from this morning's session is how do you define that brand Jamaica, and how do you protect brand Jamaica when the diaspora, the people who are Jamaican who live outside of Jamaica, is so much wide as well?
Well, I guess that the discussions on brand Jamaica are coming, especially tomorrow. And you will hear lots of different views. But indeed, brand Jamaica is something that should be nationally owned. And then it's the nation state that would be worried about the protection of that outside the borders of your country. So it's kind of becoming a national identity issue and an economic interest of the state. So I think the state will be the right holder in this case, and the state has to be much more proactive into protecting that brand.
Is it worth trademarking brand Jamaica or the name Jamaica?
Should ask Lily Claire about that. She knows the national Jamaican laws better than me, and she would be better positioned to answer that question.
But just the value of Jamaica on the international scene, is it worth really for a government, knowing that we've produced a reggae music, we've produced world-class athletes, we've produced craft and even a language that is certainly wanted in the world hemisphere?
Well, if you want to get the value of the brand, you will have to ask professional valuation companies to do that for you.
Yes.
And as always, it depends on who does the valuation and for whom it is done.
Right.
But it certainly comprises of many elements, and there are elements which are very difficult to put a value on. So which are not quantifiable, and you have to do some serious indexing and other work. So it's a complex job.
Yes.
It's not something which can be done straight away. There are many components to be considered, and in the various markets that brand may have different value. So you have to define exactly what you want and then see how you can support it through working on the evidence.
Fantastic, as you talk about that wide and varied issues that we must hurdle through. One of the things I know that JIPO is doing is being guided by WIPO. In terms of the legal and regulatory framework that we have in Jamaica, how can you guide us to improve and strengthen that going forward?
Yeah, I think my colleagues in the trademark sector in WIPO are probably in touch with the colleagues from JIPO in helping them how to forge their way through in this respect. But it may be more than just a trademark issue. That's what I'm saying. A brand has many components, and really it needs to be valued for the different markets where you would like to make use of it. But the brand Jamaica, that's the national identity. That's what you should go for, definitely.
And in terms of WIPO guiding Jamaica, in terms of how they deal with intellectual property rights issue, which is wide and varied, and the creative industries, which is primarily what this conference is about, because we do need that big brother in terms of WIPO has the expertise to help us grow and cement our place in understanding IP issues. How are you helping to guide us along?
Well, we are helping you on the issues where we have a competence and where we have a mandate. So we cannot probably do everything that you would need, but we'll be very happy to share the knowledge that we have, or perhaps even to point you to the right expertise if we don't have it. So what we do is we usually look at the international legislation, what can it do? Then we look at best practices, what can we share with you? And then we may even help you in the very specific circumstances of developing your own thing with the appropriate expertise that we will bring.
One of the most important interventions I thought you made this morning was you said, listen, go out and do the research for Jamaica so that you can fashion things that would be for Jamaica, as opposed to taking definitions and data from other areas, and then it may not necessarily apply to Jamaica. That's very, very important, is it not?
Absolutely, and I'm happy to repeat it at every session. We did have a discussion yesterday. I'm not sure whether the speaker who referred to this was here yesterday. And indeed, Jamaica has done a lot of the groundwork for defining its creative sector. It has done a valuation, an estimation of the economic contribution. So all that it needs to do is to keep up this research and the production of this data on an annual basis. That's it. You have it. You don't have to import a definition from another country, because it brings back the cultural specifics of that other country.
Yes.
You don't have to quote data from international organizations. They take their data from elsewhere, not from Jamaica. They take their data from trade associations. Some of it is not data that we would consider, we, the people who have dealt with research in this field, 100% credible, verifiable, or standardized. So I would really advise that you build on what you already have. You have a lot. You just need to develop, to keep it up, to produce it on a regular basis, and you'll have it all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dimitar Ganchev from the World Intellectual Property Office here at the regional conference in Jamaica on intellectual and property, as well as the creative industries. Just before we get back to the plenaries and the group discussions and presentations, we do have one of our regional partners here with us as well. Of course, I told you yesterday, and I keep telling you, 14 countries represented here in Jamaica at this regional conference at the University of the West Indies regional headquarters here. So Deborah Beckles here with us. Hi, good morning. And you're from Barbados. Tell us about the IP industry in Barbados, first of all.
Well, I am on staff at Barbados' Intellectual Property Office, and that office administers the legislation pertaining to intellectual property, and that legislation is the bedrock for the IP regime in Barbados. To that end, the 8 core areas of IP is covered: trademarks, copyright, industrial designs, patents, etc. The office that legislation since 2001 has been amended to reflect the requirements for TRIPS compliance. We receive and process many applications for trademarks, both from foreign applicants as well as local, and whereas there is a high representation for patents from foreign pharmaceutical companies, we do have on occasions some interest among the local population as well.
This morning we heard about the legal and regulatory framework that is needed for IP and creative industries. Do you have a robust kind of legal framework on which to move forward in terms of dealing with the trademark issues and intellectual property issues in Barbados?
I believe we do, since, as I've said, the core areas of IP are covered. In terms of creative industry specifically, it is that at the end of last year, the Ministry of Culture would have taken before Parliament a cultural industries bill. Cultural industries is also a sector that is identified in our national strategic plan for intellectual property, and that is the outgrowth of an IP audit that was conducted through the assistance of WIPO in 2006, and that strategic plan is one that identifies the creative industry sector as a key vehicle for growth in the economy.
Fantastic. Well, let me just ask before we go, because I know the next session is about to start, what then are the key points that you would want to take away from here to go back to Barbados and implement, given that this is the first regional conference of its kind?
The key points that I would have been exposed to so far would relate to the and frankly, it's not anything new. It is reminders we need to put out there, in that the creator is the person with whom the rights repose as author and creator. That those rights should be respected, and that is something that we try to deal with in our building awareness for IP programs, where we do outreach to the public, to schools, etc. And then those rights, though exclusive, are managed by the rights holder, and he has the right, if there are interested parties, to actually issue licenses. So there's a sharing of the rights that are created by the authors, etc.
Wow, so lots to learn here in Jamaica, lots you have been learning. Please say hi to your counterparts in Barbados for us, all right? Thank you so much. Deborah Beckles from the Barbados IPO, that's the Intellectual Property Office there in Barbados. Thanks a lot, Deborah. And now we return to the main conference room for the second session of the day. I'll tell you that the morning session dealt with the legal and regulatory framework. Lots of discussions held with that one. Now for the mid-morning session, we're looking at digital opportunities and developments for creative industries. That one, in terms of the discussion, should be mouth-watering as well. Let's go back to the main conference room.